Earlier this week I took apart the Karger sliding spindle lathe because I want to rework the pulley. I think originally this lathe was using a round leather belt, and I don't know where to buy those, and I'm sure not going to shoot a cow for its leather belt. So I have decided that I will try and cut a proper V-groove into the pulley. And no, I'm not going to use one of those flashy colored polyurethane belts. Those will probably slip, and I would still need to make a fitting motor pulley. I only have this small chuck from my old lathe, so grabbing the pulley from this side is not an option. And I don't want to grab it from the inside because I might damage the taper. So that only leaves grabbing it this way. But this means that I can only machine the biggest pulley groove, maybe also the second biggest. But for the rest of the grooves the tool overhang would be too much. For now I'm okay with this, since I'm going to use a frequency controller, and I'm planning to only use this pulley groove. I think I will end up with a semi-useful speed range, good enough for testing the lathe. But before I start working on this pulley, I'm going to turn a piece of aluminium that will plug up this hole. That way I can support the pulley with the tailstock. It looks like that this ugly looking piece of aluminium is the only thing I have that is going to fit. Well, you use what you have. Beautiful. I can work with this. I was aiming for 35 and I overshot by 400th. Well, the hole inside the pulley is a bit tapered, so it will probably be okay. I will run a file over here and then I'm going to test. It's pretty close. I'll throw it in front of the space heater and try again later. And maybe it needs some convincing with a hammer. But now I'm going to part this off. What the Well, that was unexpected. I'll admit I'm too lazy to start working with the hacksaw. I think I lined it up pretty good again. Tighten it up extra good. Alright, here we go again. Part 2. It has a nice wobble. I'll make the gap a little wider. I'm giving up. No, not yet. Fuck. Ah, shit. Well, that's it. Woo! There it is. Worst parting job of the year. Yeah, that will do. I was scraping off some paint here where the plug is going to sit, and I noticed that this here is a pressed in part. There are actually two parts. There's another one down there, and they make up the internal taper. But there's more. While cleaning up the outside, where I'm going to use my test indicator, I noticed that this here is also a separate pressed on part, and the same can be seen on the other side. So where I thought this was one big piece of cast iron, it might actually be 1, 2, 3 and 5 rings, 8 parts pressed together. So now I'm not sure what kind of material this is. It might be cast iron, it might be steel. I guess we will find out. But this being a separate pressed on part does mean that I can't cut my V-groove all too deep. It looks a little bit over 11 millimeters high. The new belt should be 8 millimeters high, so I think we're good. Now I'm going to use the hot air gun to strip some paint. It will also heat up the pulley, so hopefully the plug will slip right into place. Well, the pulley is nice and toasty. Let's insert the plug. It needs some convincing. I'll put it in the vise. This less than perfect repair job showed up underneath the paint. I'm hoping it will stick together when I'm cutting into this pulley. I don't like how the pulley sits in the corner of the jaws here, so I will add some aluminium pieces. That will hopefully prevent the jaws from damaging the pulley. So here are the aluminium pieces I've added. Hopefully these will prevent the pulley from damage. And I'm also hoping they will keep everything in place. I spent some time trying to get this to run perfectly through, but I have to accept that that is never going to happen. So there's a few tenths here and there run out, but I don't think that will be a big problem. As long as there is not a big wobble sideways, I think it will be all fine. So how do you guys like my new test indicator? It's a cheapie, but that's okay. I have no obsession with red starter boxes, either filled or empty. I also got a stand for it, but that seems to be taking the long way home. So I'm using this old piece of shit I have that keeps on sagging. I think it was actually made in the Netherlands, so it makes sense because the whole of the Netherlands is sagging. Alright, now I'm going to carefully drill that center hole. To be honest, I have some doubt about this setup. If I tighten up the tailstock too much, the spindle starts to drag. I have actually considered using the spindle as an arbor, but the threaded end of the spindle didn't fit the throat of the chuck, and I don't want to risk damaging the thread. Well, it took a long time, but I think I'm ready to make a cut. And the first thing I'm going to do is make the pulley groove a little deeper using this parting tool. I'm running a lathe at about 50 RPM. This is the first time I'm turning something a little bigger than, let's say, 10 centimeters, so wish me luck. Cast iron. The belt slipped. I'll try and tighten it up a little more. Bit more speed. That's quite a lot of cheddar. I'm not brave enough to feed it in any faster. Again, the belt slipped. I sometimes get oil on my belt because when changing the belt it comes very close to the headstock, and that's where the oil runs that comes from the bearing. I'm going to clean the belt and try again. I switched to a larger pulley on the motor and a smaller on the lathe, but since the VFD drive wasn't the problem, I thought I'll give this a go. But it does mean that the lathe will now run 70 RPM. I'm going to find another parting tool, see if that makes a difference. Still the same tool, but I tightened up the gips. This is a different tool bit. It's a little wider actually. That's no better. Next up is this tiny little parting tool. Let's see what happens. Still chatter. This side here is higher than that one, so I'll cut this one down till it's the same size as the other one. I was going to grind a form tool to make the V-groove, but since I have so much chatter, I've decided to set the top slide to 17 degrees, which is almost impossible to do with this protractor, so I'm hoping for the best here. That's the bronze you're hearing. I'm making progress, but every time I'm hitting the bronze patch here, the tool bit get pushed sideways. I'll show you. Seems to be very hard to cut. I switched to yet another tool, and I'm hoping this one will cut through that repair job. It doesn't sound very good. There still is a bit of a high spot, but I'll try to file it down a bit. I moved the top slide 34 degrees to the left, and I'm ready to cut the other side. Well, that's finally done. The belt fits reasonably well, I think. Hopefully the new belt I ordered, a longer one, has the same dimensions. And when that belt is here, I can put the spindle back together. I must say that this job was a lot more difficult than I ever imagined. And it took a lot more time than I thought it would. But it's done, so that's all water under the bridge now. Well, that's it for me. To be continued.